Sciences of the Soil Health Institute, and she's a part of their leadership team where she develops grant proposals, manages stakeholders, relations, communication projects, and much more with the team. She's also the director of the Institute's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program. She manages their internship programs and minority farmer recruitment programs. So she's doing a wealth of just doing a great job at the Soil Health Institute there. Prior coming to the Soil Health Institute, Dr. Staley conducted research on the efficacy of plant botanicals and fatty acids used as antimicrobials against foodborne pathogens. She is also there she worked in the Department of Agriculture and Food Science at Alabama A&M. We won't hold that against you. We're a few bulldogs in the house here. But then she worked as a licensed commodity grader in poultry and shell eggs for the USD Agriculture Marketing Services for about 6 years. As an advanced science teacher, she's even had the opportunity to list those in K-12 programs too. She's a member of the Soil Science Society of America and serves on the National Advisory Council of the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity, and that's the University of Oklahoma. She received her Bachelor's of Science in Horticultural Sciences from Andrews University. She also has her Master's in Plant and Soil Sciences from Tuskegee University, and her PhD in Plant and Soil Sciences with an emphasis on food safety from Alabama A&M. Dr. Staley resides in Huntsville, Alabama, where she farms 3 acres of market vegetables to help feed the community. We warmly welcome you, Dr. Staley.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm just so excited to be here and to be in your presence. Before I get started, I just want to congratulate SR1 Ag for all the work that they're doing. I think they deserve a round of applause. It's taken a lot of planning to make this event possible, so I think this is just wonderful, and you all are very blessed to have them in your community. So I bring you greetings from the Soil Health Institute. We are a small nonprofit organization. We're located in Morrisville, North Carolina, where our mission is to protect the vitality and productivity of soil through education, research, and advancement. We are a unique organization. We're a unique organization in that our organization, we're all scientists, right? We have about 15 scientists, PhD scientists. We have soil chemists, soil microbiologists, soil scientists, soil physicists. You name it, we've got it, right? But all of us have a passion of educating farmers on soil health and giving farmers the education that they need and the knowledge that they need when deciding to switch from conventional practices to soil health practices. We realize that the business case is very important to farmers, right? You want to make sure that you're going to be able to make some money, right? You don't want a whole bunch of losses because you have families to take care of, and we want to make sure that you have credible scientific information to help you to make an informed decision. Move it to the next one. We also have our internship program. Dr. Hendricks referred to that. We have, this is the 4th year of our internship program, and we have 5 students. And so we have a new project called USRCF, is United States Regenerative Cotton Fund, right? So it was actually funded by Ralph Lauren Corporate Foundation because Ralph Lauren, they want to buy sustainably grown cotton from farmers who are growing sustainable cotton. And so there's a market for that, and now all of these other companies have kind of jumped on the bandwagon. You probably heard a lot about regenerative agriculture, soil health. You have Levi's, Wrangler, everybody wants to start buying sustainably grown cotton. They want to use it in their products, okay? And also, with our internship program, so there's certain states that we're working in, and in those states we're targeting HBCUs and recruiting students from those universities. So It's a wonderful and unique program in that we actually match the students with one of our scientist mentors that are out in the field, and so they get to experience research from the very beginning, planning the experiment, to sampling, to doing data analysis, and actually going to a professional meeting and actually presenting their research. And we actually had 2 students to present their research last year, and they actually won awards for the research they did over the summer. So we're just really excited. You know, not only do we want to engender greater diversity in agriculture, but we also want to put our children in leadership positions, because those are the people who are making the decisions for the farmers. So I'm really excited about it. If you have any college-age kids who are interested in agriculture, want an internship, please give me a call. Okay. Also, we are passionate about doing minority farmer recruitment. We understand that a lot of our farmers are not privy to a lot of the educational research that is out there, and so we want to make sure that all of the programs that we have at C.O.O.L Health Institute are equitable to all farmers. So, I was excited when I started seeing these articles about a movement going on, saying that people are coming back to the land. Young African Americans come back to the land and they're taking up agriculture. And I was just so happy to hear it, because I remember in my days when I was at Tuskegee, and during the summer, the only people that would be out on the farm would be the farm workers and then students, right, doing their research. And during that time, I was one of those students. And so it was interesting because they had a lot of farmer worker positions or farm positions in the summer, and they had a hard time filling them. And I remember one summer, I was out and I was kind of observing the students that did take those jobs. And it was mostly students that were from Africa. Our African American students did not want to take those jobs because they felt like it was slave work, right? It wasn't, they can't learn anything, right? They didn't want to be out there in the hot sun. And so now to see that that dynamic is changing is very exciting. But then when I'm out in the field and I'm doing my farmer recruitment and I talk to farmers, older farmers who are in their 70s or 80s, I was kind of perplexed because I was thinking about what I wanted to talk with you about. And I was like, wow, okay, I see this movement of these young people coming back to the land. And now, but I'm hearing all these stories from older farmers who talked about all of the things that they've gone through. This distrust that they have with USDA and the discrimination and all of the things that they dealt with. I've heard stories about some farmers losing land, right? They're signing up for some programs and they're not really sure about what those programs include. And so maybe they're not able to meet an obligation that wasn't communicated to them. And so they end up losing their land. And I've heard about all of the applications with USDA for various programs and how the farmers don't really understand the applications and they don't have anybody who's willing to assist them in filling out those applications. I know my little farm, I just had an NRCS person, we actually got on the phone and he went over an application with me for a conservation program that they have. And honestly, if he didn't help me, I probably wouldn't know how to fill it out. So that's definitely a need. And so I was thinking about what can I come and I can tell these new beginning farmers, because I'm excited because you're like heroes, right? Because you are feeding people, you're feeding your families, you're feeding the public. We depend on you, right? So I was thinking about I want to be able to inspire you and encourage you, because farming is hard. I mean, my 3 little acres I have is hard. But I know that when you have a heart for it and you have a heart for feeding people and you have a heart for the land and taking care of the earth, that hard work pays off. And you just feel good about it. It gives you a sense of pride when you're doing something that means so much. So I was thinking about what strategies could I talk to them about that would make their journey easier. Because even though I talk with farmers who are older and who have been through a lot of just negative experiences, and even though USDA, and I don't want to put everything all on USDA because I worked for them for a few years, and it wasn't bad, but those things do exist. But I noticed that a lot of the farmers I talked with, they weren't interested in even applying for anything anymore, and so they were missing out on a lot of the programs. And I was thinking about what strategies can I can I give to you that I think would help you on your journey? And so the first strategy I came up with was community. What does it mean to build a community among farmers, right? So I thought about the injustices and everything that's been done. And I thought about, what about if communities farmers come together where you're groups of 2 or 3 or 4 or even larger? Organizations like SR1 Ag definitely is a big help to communities of farmers. But I was thinking, how can we help one another? And so I put on there supporting one another, sharing our stories. I was talking to one farmer who said that it was a meeting that he would go to every year. And I asked him, I said, so what did you like about those meetings? And he said, being with this organization, they kept me out of a lot of trouble. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, there was farmers who were losing their land. A lot of things were happening, and if I didn't know any better and I signed up for this, that could have been me. But then he also talked about, it really felt good that they were able to tell the story. I wasn't in this alone. They were able to share their stories with me. We were able to communicate and be a support to one another. And he talked about how that meant so much to him, especially going through those hard times. So I encourage you to tell your stories and share stories. And I have sharing your resources, time, talent, and education. You might have somebody in your group that might be good with maybe writing grants, or somebody that might be good with doing research, or helping to fill out those applications, right, for those different programs, or even someone who is just really knowledgeable about different programs out there. Like when community people come together, there's so much that you can do together. And, hey, we're not in competition. There is plenty of business out there. There's plenty of people that need food, so we can come and we can work together and share those resources. Sharing family legacies. I know that they say that a lot of people who are, the movement of people coming back to the farm, a lot of times I find this farmland that their families had, and they left. They said they didn't want to be part of it. But then they realized later in life that, hey, that there was value in that. So they decided to come back and continue on that legacy. So sharing your legacies is very important. Fighting alongside one another, again, that support when you're going through things like that gentleman said. It was nice to be able to have people there, people around me who understood and could be a support. Assessing services at local colleges and universities, extension offices. There's a lot of resources out there, but sometimes we just don't know it. Sometimes because I think as a people, we have difficulty we don't like to read and do research. And unfortunately, that puts us at a disadvantage. And so, like I said, if you have someone in your group that loves to read and research, you all can just glean that from one another. But just taking advantage of all those, there's a lot of resources out there. But I know that when I talk to a farmer and I said, okay, I'm going to email this to you, and then I'm going to call you back and we're going to talk about it. I'll wait maybe a week or two. I'll call back. They haven't read it. I'll wait a little longer. I'll call back and they hadn't read it. And so, and these are good opportunities. But again, and I understand it's busy. People are busy. But in order for us to be successful, we have to know what resources are out there and services are out there. Applying for all those USDA programs, apply for everything that you can qualify for. Let's see, doing your research, I talked about that, and banding together, because there is power in numbers. So that doesn't need any explanation. So what is soil health? Okay. So I know that you've probably been hearing a lot about soil health and regenerative agriculture. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon because that's the thing, right? But it's not anything new. Our ancestors, the indigenous people, they did that back then. So this is not a new phenomenon. It's been reawakened, I would say, right? But this is things that are ingrained in us. I'm sure when you were growing up, and if you grew up on a farm or you had your parents' garden, they probably gave you some tips and told you different things that you can do, right? And so when we were young, we were like, okay, that's some weird stuff my grandma might told me or whatever. But we're realizing that those things are actually their soil health practices. And so we have to kind of reach back and take hold of that and bring it back to the forefront. When I talk to my Native American brothers and sisters, they talk about their indigenous practices, and all of it is related to soil health. So soil health is the ability of a soil to be able to sustain animal life, plant life, and human life. It's just that simple. So for you to have that, you have to have something in the soil. So the difference between soil and dirt, right? Because we know that dirt doesn't have anything in it. It's not any microorganisms. It's just nothing. It's just plain. It's just nothing. But soil is teeming with microorganisms and it's organic matter and beneficial insects. It's just like a whole environment, a whole biota that's actually in the soil. And I think a lot of times we take for granted when we walk outside all the different things that are going on around us, and the ground that we're walking on, the trees, the flowers, so many things that are happening in the atmosphere and we have no idea. So I don't know, I guess if you're farmers, you're more than likely nature people, but just really taking the time and just enjoying the outside and just observing. A lot of times because life is so busy, we don't do that. And so it's just so important to see all the things that are going on around us. So soil health strategy. So the Soil Health Institute, we've been, like I said before, we want to make sure that we give you credible scientific information, right? So you can make the right decision. So about a year ago, we started this project called Nation, and we had about 125 sites that we went to, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that if I come to you as a farmer and you're in rural Mississippi in a certain area and you have a certain type of soil, we can tell you, okay, hey, if you do these practices right here, this is going to get your soil to where it needs to be, right? So in this project, we went to 125 sites all over the United States. We didn't do that on our own. We had about 95 partners to do it with us. But we sampled all of those soils in all of those areas because we wanted to show you what's important, what is important when it comes to soil health, what things should you look for to determine if your soil is healthy or not. And then we wanted to show you economically how much you can save by when you start using those soil health practices. So the soil health principles are minimizing soil disturbance, maximizing diversity, keeping a continuous living roots growing as much as possible, and maintaining residue as long as possible. So in soil health, and I don't know how much you're familiar with it, we believe that cover cropping and no-till are central to soil health. We have some people who do reduced tillage, we have some people who do strip tillage, and that's fine, but the synergistic combination of cover cropping and no-till is like the glue that keeps soil health together, right? Because with cover crops, you always have a continuous cover on the ground, and cover crops can also be crops that you sell. Like for instance, in the fall time, we plant all of our 3 fields with turnips. And so we let people come and pick turnips, just come and pick them freely. People really enjoy that because they're there and they're not only picking turnips, but they're talking and laughing and just having a good old time and sharing recipes and stories and all of that, because it's all about community. And so we let it just sit there and overwinter and sit there, and then we actually plant in the residue of the turnips that are left, right? And so that means the soil always has a continuous cover, is always protected. So that will reduce erosion and runoff, right? Because when you have that you call like a green manure that's left in the soil, as those turnip greens in the bottoms, as they disintegrate and break down in the soil, they're actually providing nutrients. They're providing food for microorganisms, and they're providing nutrients to the soil. And so you plant like in the residue that's left over, and that new plant comes up, and so you actually have natural fertilizer. Of course, when you have a nice cover on there that's established, you don't have to worry too much about weeds. It reduces your weeds, so you have to use less herbicides and pesticides and all of that, because also the insects, it makes a difference as well. And so it says soil health practices, conservation tillage, cover crops, conservation crop rotation, nutrient management, and pest management. So when you use these principles, those principles target, and those practices are combined with those principles, and this is what happens to your soil. Well, it helps build your soil. As you continue to plant in the residue, and you have residue, every season you're having more residue, that's adding organic matter to the soil. You're going to see all your worms and all that stuff, and all the the little critters in the soil. That's helped allow those soil processes take place. They're there. Everything that needs to be there is there. You're not taking away from the soil. When you have certain crops like cotton, carrots, various crops that when you harvest them, you have to really disrupt the soil. And so when you disrupt the soil, you change the what they call a soil disturbance, but you change the structure of the soil. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of aggregates, soil aggregates. Have any of you heard of that before? No? Well, I don't have a picture of it, but if you were to take cut a piece of soil and look at it, you're going to see structure. Like you're going to see like different little particles that are kind of like fit together, and then between those particles, you're going to see little holes that are what they call soil pores. So if you have good aggregate stability in your soil, when you have like a really heavy rain, you'll be able to get out into your field a little bit faster. And I was just talking to a farmer down in Greenwood, and he was telling me that since he's been using the soil health practices, he's noticed that he's able to get into his field faster after rain, because that water is able to percolate down through the soil pores into the soil. And also he's finding that he doesn't have to irrigate as much because the soil has a water holding capacity where he doesn't have to irrigate. So how many of you can think of the things that he's not having to pay for? He's not having to worry about. Maybe his water bill might be a little lower, right? Because he doesn't have to irrigate. I'm talking about the green manure that's left on the soil. So you're talking about natural fertilizer. And you know, even when you're doing organic, you can still deplete your soil even doing organic methods. You know, it doesn't organic. I mean, there's organic farmers who are doing organic who are still depleting the soil and destroying the soil. So soil health and organic definitely goes together very well, because it's helping you to definitely be a good steward of the earth, but whatever you're taking out of that soil, where you're taking the least amount out of that soil, but you're always putting back into the soil so that it can give your plants what it needs. Everything starts with the soil. It's the foundation. It's the foundation of plant life. It's the foundation of what we're doing. And if you have healthy soil, you're going to have healthy plants. People find that when they use soil health practices, that they just see so many benefits, and they find that it takes about 2 to 3 years to actually start seeing a lot of benefits from soil health. But really the benefits definitely outweigh that time that you have to wait. And I mean, some people say they see the changes faster than others, but usually it's around 2 to 3 years you actually start to see benefits. Sometimes it's in yield, sometimes it's in just the condition of your soil, you having to put less inputs into your soil. It's just they see a lot of benefits from about the 3rd year. So this is actually a picture of 2 fields. It's actually the same field, it's a fence in between, but it's one is done with soil health practices. How many of you can tell which one is done with soil health practices? The left one, right? Yeah, it's the left one, and then a field that's done with conventional practices. So, I mean, even the soil health practices one looks really pretty, right? I want to be in that field. But the evidence is just so powerful. That picture is a powerful statement to what us just going back to the old way and taking time and looking at our soil. And I'm trying to say, I want to say the food is going to taste better. There's no scientific evidence behind that. I'm just saying, I imagine that the food would probably taste better because there's more nutrient dense. It has that nutrients that's been lost. They say that studies show that the nutrient concentration in foods is different from 50 years ago, and that's why we have to kind of like eat a lot more of those good things, because it's just not a lot of nutrients in the food, and it's because of the soil. You know, like I said, the quality of your plant depends on the condition of your soil. Okay, so this is another picture showing you just the differences in soil that has soil health practices and one that doesn't. You see the one on the right here. You see it has a living cover. You can look at you can see the little aggregates. You can see the soil formation, everything on the one on the left. You don't see any of that. It's just like bland. It's compacted. There's nothing there. Okay. So we were looking at various different soil health practices when we were determining what this research that we're doing on the 2025 site. So we looked at carbon cycling, we looked at carbon sequestration, which is the ability for a soil to store carbon in it. We were looking at water cycling, nutrient cycling, aerobic stability. We were just looking at all these different measurements that they normally do when they're looking at soil health. And so we determined that there are basically three things that we look at that are going to determine your soil health, and that's soil aggregate stability, carbon storage, and nitrogen cycling. And those are the three that we're actually going to be announcing that in a more formal way with more information at our annual meeting this August. So if you're interested in attending, it's free. I gave Dr. Hendricks my card. Please take my card and email me, and I can send you a link so that you can register. But it's a lot of good information. And also, even on our website, we have a lot of videos where we work with farmers growing cotton and different commodities who are using soil health practices. We just have a lot of resources on our website if you ever want to go. Everything is free. You just go on there and just look. We have a YouTube channel. So you can see what I'm talking about, and they also have links to scientific articles that we've published. And when you publish scientific literature, scientifically that means your stuff is right? So we want you to make sure you have access to all of that. Okay. So this right here is something that when I go out and I talk to farmers, so I do farmer recruitment for our programs, and so one of the things we're trying to do is have what we call economic fact sheet, to show a farmer how much they can save in using soil health practices. So this kind of gives you an idea of what it is. We see how, look at all the inputs, the seed, the fertilizer amendments, the pesticides, fuel and electricity, labor services, post-harvest expenses, equipment ownership, all of that goes into it. And so we look at all the different commodities, and so we're able to show the farmer, hey, when we get the information on the farm, we actually have an interview. It's like about a 2-hour interview. We have the farmer, ask them questions about, what they're growing and their yields and all of that. And then we're able to actually give them information to show them what they can actually save. And I believe that the average farmer was able to save, once implementing soil health practices, they were able to save about $53 per acre. And so when you're thinking about, 100 acres or more, that's a substantial savings that you can put into a college fund for your kids or however. Even one of the farmers that I spoke with in Alabama, he was telling me, I don't really use my tractor anymore. So that, and you see how expensive gas is, right now it's so expensive, and you're thinking about having to operate a tractor, he doesn't really have to do that anymore, because he's using soil health practices. So again, in the times that we're living in, right, and you all coming back to the land and are beginning farmers, I think knowing that information is very good to know, right? So you can, maybe you might, I just feel that having this information, it empowers you to know that you don't have to do all the things that maybe your grandfather or great-grandfather did, that you can make some changes and that you can not only take care of the earth, but you can also save some money too. And so this is actually a published article on the research that we did on the 125 sites. So if you want to go and take a look at it, it says Farmers Insight on Soil Health Indicators and Adoption. Please look it up. You can put in soil health, and a lot of articles, and the Soil Health Institute, and a lot of articles will come up, and you can kind of just read about a lot of our findings. And so again, we're going to revisit it. The practice principles of soil health are minimize disturbance. That means, when you're harvesting certain crops and they just totally tear the soil up, right? We don't want that. So we want to minimize disturbance. Of course, having cover crops can help that. Keeping living roots, that's cover crops again. Keeping soil covered, that's cover crops again. Diversify, you want to have the diversity in your cover crops, right? And then also integrating grazing appropriately. If you have animals, you can actually rotate your grazing. You can grow cover crops for your animals. They can eat the cover crops. They can poop out that liquid gold, I call it, to naturally fertilize, and the cycle goes on and on and on. And so this again, we'll actually go to the next one. Okay, the next one, I already talked about that. The next one, sorry. Okay, and this is something that we also show farmers, and this is what we call soil health targets. And basically, it's kind of an indicator showing Where you have on the left is business as usual, those are conventional practices. And then we have a target, so we're actually able to show farmers. We're working on a tool where farmers will be able to actually do this on their laptop or on their phone, where they'll be able to put in certain information, and this tool will be able to show farmers where they are and how healthy their soil can become and where you are on that scale. And I think that's really valuable information. That's something that's going to be coming out. Hopefully, I'm hoping for next year it'll be coming out. That's something our scientists are working on. Okay, so all soils can exhibit health and degradation. There's mounting evidence that soil health benefits can help farmers economically and just make life easier for farmers. Soil health can be monitored with 3 simple measurements, and I'll talk about those measurements, where aggregate stability, carbon storage, and also nitrogen cycling. And soil health and management targets are locally relevant means of assessment, and soil health requires local technical know-how. So another thing that we're trying to implement is when farmers have trainings, or they come to some of our, I won't say trainings because you're already trained, you already know what to do. So I'm gonna say education, right? But when we want you all, and I talked about community before, we want you all to be able to come and say, hey, I learned this, and share it with somebody else. I don't know if you ever heard of the concept train the trainer, right? And that's going and sharing with your community of people, with your farmers, what you've learned, and you all working together and just putting those things into practice. So I just encourage you. I don't want to talk very long, but I just want to encourage you just to build community with fellow farmers, and just take advantage of all the resources that are out there. Definitely make sure to, and I mentioned about going to your universities. Your universities have agriculture programs, and your extension service and all of that. All of them have, outside of USDA, they have so many programs out there. Look up those resources, find those resources. If I could be of any help to you with those resources, please, like I said, take my card, and I'll try to help us any way that I can. When we have new projects and things coming up, and I see that, that you all could be a part, and let you all know that information.